The colony ship Meridian had been humanity's last hope, carrying 10,000 souls across the void to a new world. When it crashed on Viridian Prime, only 200 survived. Among them was Marcus Webb, a structural engineer who spent his days rebuilding what had been lost and his nights staring at alien stars. The Kelith were already there, a civilization that had watched the human ship fall from the heavens like a dying comet. They were giants compared to humans, averaging 9 feet tall with broad frames covered in scales that shimmered between bronze and copper. Their faces were angular, almost reptilian, with large golden eyes that saw in spectrums humans could barely imagine. Tala was different from the other Kelith. Where her people moved with confidence and grace, she hunched her shoulders, trying to make herself smaller. At 10 feet and 4 inches, she towered even over her own kind. Her scales were darker, almost burgundy, and her frame was heavier, more muscular. In Kelith culture, this made her undesirable, unsuitable for bonding and raising offspring. She worked as a mediator between species, translating not just language, but intention and culture. That was how she met Marcus during a dispute over water rights between the human settlement and a nearby Kelith village. While others shouted and gestured, Marcus had simply listened, his green eyes focused entirely on understanding rather than winning. After the negotiation, she found him by the settlement's edge, sketching designs for a new irrigation system that would serve both communities. He looked up as her shadow fell over him. "That was impressive," she said in careful English, each word measured. "Your patience," Marcus smiled, undaunted by her size. "My grandmother used to say that most problems aren't really about what people are arguing about. You proved her right today." Over the following months, they worked together often. Marcus learned that Tala loved the mathematics of architecture, the way forces could be balanced and distributed. She learned that he had lost his wife and daughter in the crash, that he carried their memory like a stone in his chest, but refused to let it weigh him down completely. One evening, as they reviewed plans for a joint community center, Tala's composure cracked. A group of young Kelith had passed, their mocking words cutting through the air. One phrase in particular echoed, "Who would ever bond with that mountain?" Marcus noticed her hands trembling, saw how she made herself smaller in her chair. "What did they say?" he asked quietly. Tala's laugh was bitter. "The truth, that I am too large, too ungainly. In my culture, grace and proportion matter. I have neither. I am not breeding material, as you would say." Marcus set down his tablet and looked at her, really looked at her, in a way that made her uncomfortable. Not with disgust or pity, but with something else entirely. "Can I tell you what I see?" He asked. She wanted to refuse, to leave, but something in his voice held her still. "I see someone strong enough to carry equipment it would take 3 of us to lift. I see someone whose mind works through complex problems faster than my computer. I see scales that catch the light like burnished metal, and eyes that notice every detail in a room." He paused. "I see someone beautiful who has been taught not to see it herself." Tala felt something crack inside her chest. "You are being kind. I am being honest." Marcus stood and walked closer, though he barely reached her shoulder even when she sat. "On Earth, we had a saying, 'Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.' Your people have one set of eyes, Tala. I have another." The friendship that had been building between them shifted into something neither had expected. Marcus began leaving small gifts at her door: a flowering plant from Earth's greenhouse, a phone, polished stone from the riverbed, a sketch of her profile that captured a strength she had never seen in herself. Tala reciprocated with Kelith poetry, carefully translated, that spoke of mountains and permanence and foundations that could not be shaken. Her people noticed. The whispers grew louder, more cutting. How could she debase herself with a creature so small? What madness possessed her? His people noticed too. Some were supportive, others concerned. The size difference alone presented questions no one wanted to ask out loud. But Marcus was undeterred, and Tala found herself growing braver in the face of his certainty. "My body is too big, Marcus," she said one night as they stood together watching Viridian Prime's 3 moons rise. "Even if this were possible, if we were to bond as my people do, I am not meant for such things. I would hurt you." Marcus took her massive hand in both of his. His fingers barely wrapped around 2 of hers, but his grip was firm. "Let me decide what I can handle," he said. "Let me show you what cherishing someone actually means." The courtship that followed was gentle and patient. Marcus learned Kelith customs, the ritual exchanges, the formal declarations. He commissioned a craftsman to forge a bonding band large, enough for Tala's wrist, embedding it with stones from both their worlds. She wore traditional human white when they made their commitment official, a dress that the settlement seamstresses had labored over for weeks. The skeptics on both sides predicted failure, but what they found was compatibility that transcended physical differences. Marcus built them a home with doorways tall enough for Tala and furniture scaled to accommodate them both. She learned to control her strength around him, and he learned to navigate a world built for giants. They communicated openly about every concern, every fear, every boundary. When Tala began showing signs of pregnancy 6 months later, the shock rippled through both communities. Kelith physicians had declared it biologically impossible. Human doctors had agreed. Yet there she was, her body changing in ways that unmistakably indicated new life. Dr. Lisa Morgan, the settlement's lead physician, examined Tala with a mixture of wonder and concern. "The embryo appears to be viable, but this is unprecedented. We have no baseline for what to expect." Tala's own fear was palpable. "What if? My body is too harsh for a child with human genetics. What if I cannot carry to term?" Marcus held her hand through every examination, every moment of doubt. "We will handle whatever comes," he said, "together." The pregnancy was difficult. Tala's body struggled to balance 2 different biological imperatives. There were days she could barely rise from bed, her massive frame exhausted by the effort of sustaining a hybrid life. Marcus stayed by her side, reading to her, bringing her water, rubbing her aching shoulders with hands that seemed absurdly small against her bulk. The Kelith medical specialists worked alongside human doctors in an unprecedented collaboration. They synthesized new supplements, developed monitoring protocols, and argued good-naturedly about treatment approaches. The pregnancy became a symbol of what their 2 peoples could accomplish together. When Tala went into labor, both medical teams assembled. The delivery took 14 hours, with moments where both mother and child seemed at risk. But Marcus never left her side, his voice a constant anchor in the storm of pain and fear. The infant that finally emerged was small by Kelith standards, large by human ones. She had her mother's bronze scales scattered across her skin like freckles, and her father's green eyes. Her hands were 5-fingered, but tipped with retractable claws. She was entirely unique, entirely impossible, and entirely perfect. They named her Nova, for the brilliant explosion of light and life she represented. In the weeks that followed, Tala held her daughter with a gentleness that contradicted every insult ever thrown at her. Her massive hands cradled the infant with perfect control, and her deep voice crooned lullabies in 2 languages. Marcus watched. His bonded partner transform, not into someone new, but into someone who finally saw herself as he had always seen her. "You are always breeding material," he said one night as Tala nursed their daughter. "You were always enough. You just needed someone to see it." Tala looked down at Nova, then at Marcus, her golden eyes bright with tears. "You gave me more than a child. You gave me myself." The settlement celebrated Nova's birth as a symbol of hope, proof that from disaster and difference, new life could emerge. Young Keleth, who had once mocked Tala, now watched her with new respect. Human children asked to touch her scales, fascinated rather than frightened. But for Marcus and Tala, the greater victory was simpler. They had built a family on a foundation of seeing each other truly, of refusing to accept limitations imposed by others, of cherishing what others dismissed. They had proven that love did not require sameness, only willingness to bridge the gap. As Nova grew, thriving in ways that astonished the medical teams, she became the first of a new generation. Other mixed pairs began to form, emboldened by what had seemed impossible. The colony that had crashed in desperation began to bloom with unexpected possibilities. And through it all, Marcus continued to hold Tala as he had from the beginning, his arms barely spanning her width, his heart easily encompassing all of her. She learned to stand tall, to take up space without apology, to see herself reflected in his eyes, and know that she had always been worthy. In the end, it was humanity's most mundane gift that changed everything. Not technology or medicine, but simply the stubborn insistence that worth was not measured in proportions or cultural standards. That sometimes the very things others called flaws were exactly what made someone irreplaceable. That night, with Nova sleeping between them, and the alien stars shining through their window, Tala whispered, "Thank you, foe."